You're watching Jet Lag Rock and Roll Melbourne edition, and I'm Kim Salmon. I've been living in Melbourne for about 30 years. I'm not a native, and I have to say I've never really felt like a native, and that's possibly a clue to what I love about the place. I think I've always probably felt not like a tourist but a visitor, because there's so many great places to visit, so many cool destinations.
For rockers, rollers and uncontrollers like us two, the best thing about Melbourne is that there's heaps of places for bands to play, and there's real cheap public transport to get you to all those places.
I love Melbourne because it has a really great and very active music scene. There's plenty of small venues and plenty of old pubs everywhere, which really support the local music scene, and also everyone supports each other.
I was born in Melbourne. For a long time I've taken for granted how good it is to always be surrounded by sort of music and art. Going overseas, I think, has made me realise that we have such a strong community of artists in Melbourne that's kind of unique. We've had such a long history of really good DIY music coming out of this place.
Oh yeah, and public radio. Do you listen to public radio, Jay?
PBS and Triple R, 3CR, all very good stations.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
In terms of sightseeing in Melbourne, I quite enjoy the old Melbourne Jail. It's just a really beautiful old building in the middle of the city as part of RMIT Uni. It was built in the 1800s. They do great tours there, and Ned Kelly was hung there, famous Australian bushranger from Victoria. Look it up. It's a bit expensive these days, but still, yeah, you should go.
I really like the State Library of Victoria. I'm a library technician, so it's kind of a nerdy thing, I guess. But the State Library, I think it's the first public library that opened in Australia in 1854 by Redmond Barry. And he opened the establishment for anyone over the age of 14 that had clean hands. And it's just, it's grown into such an amazing establishment. The architecture, the building is really beautiful. It's so historic and just a wealth of knowledge.
Okay, some of the places that I like to sightsee around Melbourne is just around Flinders Lane, just outside of Flinders Station, right in the heart of the CBD. There's all these little alleyways that are like nooks and crannies, but they're all full of graffiti. When I say lanes, I call them all Flinders Lane, but you know, there's Hosier's Lane.
Whenever anyone comes from America or just anywhere overseas, the first place outside of the fish and chip shop that I'll usually take them is Hillsville Sanctuary. You get to see all kinds of Australian animals that I'm sure probably aren't around the world, and they're all kind of not really in cages. They're free to roam around a little bit, I guess.
They're sort of having a good time.
Sorta.
I think I've taken, in the last 3 years, I would have taken 5 or 6 groups of American tourists down to Hillsville Sanctuary, and they all had a good time, and they were all rockers too. Favourite animal is invariably the platypus.
Cassowary for me.
Cassowary?
Yeah.
Dangerous.
You don't have to go far to find yourself in that sort of classic Australian bushland. We've got the Fairfield Boathouse, and there's sort of little tributaries off the Yarra. My daughter and I went out there just the other weekend. It's quite almost colonial in the way it appears. You can go boating. Yeah, you can have tea and scones. You can have, they've got a restaurant up there, so you don't have to do the rustic thing. There's lots of little things that take my fancy that I can kind of sketch and paint.
Ceres is a really good site to visit in Melbourne, I think, because it's quite naturey, and it's on Merry Creek, which is like a real nice creek in Melbourne that runs all the way through with bike paths and stuff. And Ceres has big community gardens, and they do lots of workshops on permaculture and gardening stuff. And there's a cafe and like a shop that sells organic kind of fruit and vegetables that they grow there, and they've got real cool chickens, nice pattern chickens. And there's a nursery as well that has heaps of native plants. Yeah, but the chickens are the highlight for sure.
So yeah, Melbourne's a pretty huge place, and there's lots of big separate neighbourhoods which all have thousands of restaurants. It's in the city. We went to supper in. It's been there for ages. It's a Chinese place. It's open really late at night. It's been there for a long time, and I don't particularly care for white people when you go in there, which makes you realise you're onto an authentic experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, that one was 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. Bang Bang is like 2-minute walk from my house in Northcote. It's really good. Delicious noodle soups. Don't really care that much for the stir fries. I'm just always going the noodle soup with Bang Bang.
Tramway Hotel is a pub in North Fitzroy. They have a burger menu that is well known amongst the Melbourne punk community. It really encourages a lot of punks to go and hang out there, and so much that the punks actually get to design the menu. So if you're wanting sort of some punk rock burgers, you would go to Tramway Hotel for the rotating menu. The bands design the burgers. I make the burgers, so there's punk rock all around. There's punk rock in the kitchen, on the stereo. The customers are punk, the owner's punk. It's the real punk rock Melbourne experience.
Easy's the burger place, which is those train carriages on top of the building, which gives you also a great view of Collingwood and the city.
Il Pizzaiolo is a place that does Neapolitan pizza bases. It's in Thornbury. It's just really good. Classic pizzas, heaps of them. Huge, delicious.
Tiba's is in Brunswick. It is my absolute go-to whenever I'm in that area. I have Tiba's twice a week because whenever I go to band practice, I go to Tiba's. Lebanese food, the key is to get a vegetarian platter and a meat platter if you eat the meat. It's insane. It's like ends up about $11 each. Amazing.
Movida next door is a sort of basically a tapas bar, and what can you say about a restaurant that you like? Just the food's good. Something about the way it's presented, I suppose. Maybe it's the location. It's just around the corner from Hosier's Lane. It's got that ambience. You're guaranteed to get a great feed there, but I think the thing about eating out in Melbourne is there's so many places. In any given night of the week, you're going to find something, and it's like there's always something new that I don't know about.
Moroccan Soup Bar doesn't sell soup. It's amazing though. The little crunchy chickpea yogurt thing that they do is like outstanding. The best part about it as well, if you go in wanting takeaway, you just take in like a 2-litre ice cream bucket or something, and it'll be like $5 each. Like they don't actually print their menus, they just tell you what, like you basically just have to have what you get, and it's always good.
Crossways is a pretty decent restaurant in the Melbourne CBD. It's a Hare Krishna vegetarian and vegan all-you-can-eat restaurant, and basically they have like a set menu each day. It's generally curries and I think halwa for dessert.
Yeah, Crossways is really good, especially for students. If you have a student card, it's maybe $6 or something. So it's really cheap, and they've got books on the walls, lots of kind of Hare Krishna-y sorts of books, and there's a bell. So if you've enjoyed your meal, you ding the bell when you go out, and when it's really quiet, you ding it really loud, and it freaks everyone out.
Half Moon Cafe in Coburg is like an Egyptian-styled kebab place. My personal favourite is the fried cauliflower kebab. It's insane and it's real cheap for Australia. It's about $9. Everybody that I've taken there loves it.
Mario's is a old school Italian place. It's in Fitzroy. It's been there forever. Well, forever. I actually think it's been there for 20 years, which is not forever. But it's really good, and they have just really good, solid, basic Italian dishes.
Casa Iberica is a really cool little deli in Fitzroy. It specialises in Spanish and Latin American food. It's just a small little family-owned business. It's been around since the 70s. They specialise in like cheeses and cured meats. They have really awesome sandwiches there too. There isn't really much of a menu or anything. You just go in and like say that you want so-and-so on your sandwich. You got to get in there pretty early because I think they run out of things pretty quickly. And they have some really great empanadas and Portuguese tarts.
Pellegrini's is an Italian place in the city that's been there forever, and it just has a really great pre-war Italian feel to it. And again, the food is really simple and basic and sort of timeless, and it's fantastic.
My favourite coffee place is Pellegrini's. It's got that old world thing. It's got some appeal that's kind of nostalgic. It's sort of something that reminds you of maybe some other time.
If you want a good coffee, Tom Thumb has good coffee and good iced coffees that are very strong and good mochas and croissants. So it's like in the middle of all these big buildings and it's like Stuart Little's house, real tiny. And it's on Flinders Lane in the city. It's really close to AC/DC Lane and it's cool.
My girlfriend and my go-to spot for coffee is New Day Rising, which is right across the road from Triple R. Everyone that works there is an absolute legend. They're just so nice.
It's tiny, but they always do really good coffee, really good food, good service, and they've been known to put on some good records.
I don't actually know what it's called, but they put this extra little thing in the iced coffee. It's probably just something that everybody knows the name of, but I'm just like, oh, it's a big exotic new thing. It's real good though, really good.
Alimentari has really sort of nice, fancy, high-end food there, but it's really good just to go and get a coffee and maybe a salad or a meatball wrap. Staggerlees is just across the road, and they have really great coffee there as well, and a pretty good selection of salads and snacks as well. And at Staggerlees they have off menu, of course, they do sell magic coffee there, which for those in the know is a double ristretto turned into a flat white, I think. You can walk in there and really sound like a tosser when you want to get a nice coffee.
I guess it's like the Melbourne equivalent of Animal Fries.
Yeah.
One of our favourite places to get dessert, which is a bit more unconventional, is Red Triangle's Snooker Room. I really like it because you can play pool by the hour and it's open during the day, but then also really late at night, depending on what mood you're in.
I really like going there for their delicious milkshakes. I'm really bad at pool, so I never play, but they have incredible deluxe milkshake flavours like Ferrero Rocher and hot jam donut, which has actual hot jam donut blended into it, which is pretty chunky and nice. And they've also got chess sets and arcade games and things like that if you just want to hang out and have a milkshake but not play pool because you're real bad at it like me.
When you cross that river and go into St Kilda, there's this cake shop that has got the most amazing, sign. The way the logo is written on it in sort of semi-Gothic with gold leaf monarch. It's incredible. And behind that, there's just this big, huge display of unhealthy amounts of sugar and sculpted into these works of art. But I have a sweet tooth, so that's okay. So yeah, I would still have to say it's my favourite cake shop.
My favourite dessert joint would be Brunetti's in Carlton on Logon Street. It's right next to the Cinema Nova, so whenever I go to the movies, go to that place. They have more food than I could possibly get my head around. I couldn't tell you what I get every time I go there because I just generally walk up to one of the display cases and pick out something that looks good. But they have, pastries and cakes and sandwiches and apparently a gelati bar as well.
My favourite ice cream in Melbourne is Jello Bar on Lygon Street. I think that all of their flavours are real classic and there's no, I don't know, I just feel like there's this trend lately with ice cream places to, one, like when you go in it feels like you're in a club, and then two, have these weird flavours which just have like way too many ingredients. I just think that Jello Bar is just real simple and do all the classics real well, and it's delicious.
A huge range of gelato. My favourite ice cream to have there would be the tiramisu. It's got that old worldy Italian thing about it.
My favourite ice cream is Spring Street Grocer, which is a gelati bar that I worked at. The funny thing about this gelati spot is it's right across from Parliament House. So there's sort of this weird political energy. Politicians and quite conservative people congregate to eat gelati. So you sort of see them in this relaxed, casual setting.
There's loads of awesome record shops around the place. My favourite hangout for that, it's called Round and Round.
The people there who work there are really nice. I feel like they're always suggesting things that I've never heard of before. I never feel really intimidated when I go in there, which I do in heaps of other record stores because I am not much of a record nerd.
Yeah, that's a real sort of high fidelity type record bar where you've got your sort of three guys working in it, and but I find them very informative, and I always make sure I buy something when I go in there.
One thing I find really fun when I go in there is they put so much time into these little descriptions of what their favourite records are, or descriptions of the records. I feel like I've bought stuff just based on those descriptions alone, without even knowing what it is. It's a really good place to go to discover new things.
Polyester Records is a record store on Brunswick Street. It's a bit of a Fitzroy institution. It's been there for a very long time, and they've been very supportive in the local scene. You'll find plenty of local records there, some great international releases. They also do in-stores quite regularly, and there's a bar there called Crazy Arms, which is a great spot to just go and get a beer and listen to records.
I really like the record store Licorice Pie, mostly because it just had so many hidden gems, really obscure items, and really friendly service last time I went there. And they just had all these amazing 60s Australian 7-inches that were really expensive, but it was pretty nice just to look at them at least.
There's a record shop called Northside Records. If you're into soul and funk, which I am, I thoroughly recommend going in there.
Also another great record store, like one of my personal favourites on Smith Street, is Searchers. They do new and used, but they've got a very diverse selection, but well-selected records of many genres, and the guys who work there are very helpful, really nice, and they've got very competitive prices.
So Lulu's is a tiny record store out the back of a cafe in Carlton called A Fan's Notes. It's a really good licensed cafe with great food, and there was this tiny unused store out the back, and they guys from Cool Deaf Records with Dan Stewart from Distort fanzine. They got together and set up a record store out the back, and they just had some really great sort of cult, hardcore and weird underground stuff there.
Everything's at a really good price there. They're really supportive of other local musicians and international, interest.
Yeah, and a lot of really good second-hand records and books and all that kind of thing, and it's just a really good place to go hang out, listen to records and get pissed all afternoon.
Okay, my favourite place to shop is Smith Street in Collingwood, Fitzroy, sort of the border of Collingwood and Fitzroy.
I'd recommend just starting in the city and then getting on the 11 tram and just going all the way down Brunswick Street, jump off at Johnson. Once you get off at Johnson Street, if you walk up to Smith Street, you'll find like a bunch of second-hand clothing and records and knickknacks, anything that you want really.
One place in Melbourne that I really love to go shopping is the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence op shop in Brunswick, just off Lygon Street. It's a really big op shop. It's got a big section for furniture, clothing, art. They even have records in there and CDs and everything. I found some pretty good stuff in there as well. Everything's pretty well priced and doesn't really get that busy either.
It's just up the road. It's where all the hipsters buy their jeans from. There's a place called De Jour Jeans. There's often a queue around the corner. They go in there and they actually, because the jeans are actually like about $60 and you can get them tailor fitted. Forget about the hipster thing, but it's kind of cool to be able to get your jeans for $60 and have them tailor fitted. The place that's probably the gig capital of Australia is Melbourne. I think you probably find there are more venues here than anywhere. There's so many gigs, and I'm just talking about the genre that I work in, which is, well, what do you call it? I hate to use the phrase alternative rock. Indie rock's probably better. Punk rock, post-punk, whatever it is that I am. If you kind of scaled it up and went to all of the other genres of music, there's just be a gig in every street, I think. It's crazy.
So I guess my favourite venue, I'm a little bit biased because I work here, but the Tote Hotel in Collingwood. It's been going for a bit over 30 years and has live bands, too many live bands on, some might say.
I think we find ourselves there like almost every week, either playing or watching other bands there.
I end up coming here 2 or 3 times a week, see all the new bands that are on.
They've always got good shows on and generally really supportive of the music scene. It just feels like a good hub for people to come together. If you go there, you sort of always feel like you're going to see someone that you know. It's like a very welcoming place.
They have 3 different venues inside the one, upstairs, downstairs and then front bar, which all can be happening at once, so you can get an extremely packed out pub.
We often play in the front bar, which is, I think that's probably my favourite spot.
It's just an old, great institution of a music venue of Melbourne, and I'm sure many of you have heard of it and you should go visit it.
It's a highly functioning dive bar, is what it is.
There's lots of very small venues where people can feel like they're part of the music and close to it. Labour in Vain's a great one, but probably more because that's where I met my partner Maxie. That's the kind of rootsy sort of vibe. But it's a really awesome venue, and they have over the weekend you can pretty much see anything there. Because it's a small venue, it doesn't require a massive sound system, and when you avoid those sort of things you get a much more immediate sound. Things are much more direct, and it's like sitting down and having a drink with your audience, really, almost.
My favourite bar in Melbourne is definitely Hell's Kitchen.
The only good bar in the city, really, if you want to come and get a drink in the CBD. The band formed around Hell's Kitchen and the cafe that's downstairs called Jungle Juice that Lou and I worked at.
This area is kind of central to how the band formed. Melbourne's known for its laneway bars, but Hell's Kitchen, where we are right now, is actually one of the original. It's been here for about 15 years, and the story behind it was a long time ago they leased out venues in laneways really cheap to people to try and activate the areas. And Russell Tarbert bought this place, and it was quite small. Upstairs, which is vacant now, used to be all art studios, so a lot of the VCA art students who were quite young at the time and are now quite successful artists all used to be patrons here. And Russ bought a lot of their work when they were just up and coming, which is worth quite a lot of money now. So there's always been an affinity between here and the visual art scene. And yeah, so still to this day, it's a popular hangout spot for artists, musicians, creative people, and it's just in the city, and it's rare to find a bar like this in the city.
The bar that I like best is called the Old Bar, and the way I discovered it was actually a friend of mine who I met in Holland. He was once my tour manager back in the 1990s. He came to visit me for a couple of weeks, and he wanted me to take him out to some bars because he knew that Melbourne was famous for its bars. So we went to a whole lot of places, loads of, hip and groovy places, and we went from one bar to another all through the night, and we'd spend maybe get a drink there and get a cocktail or whatever, and with each thing we think, well, this isn't quite doing it for us. No, do you like this bar? Nah, that's what we would say to each other, and then we'd try another one, and we ended up at some place in Fitzroy, and it had a name, and it was the Old Bar. It was full of all of the dregs, the people that couldn't find what they were looking for in any of the other bars and didn't fit in, and that's where we found suddenly we fitted in there with all these misfits. It turned out there was a bit of a culture of the place. me and my friend, Patrick his name was, decided this is the bar that we like, this is our favourite bar. So we actually said that, this is our favourite bar. Then I found myself actually playing a gig there a few months later, so it crosses that line between bar and venue.
Well, I guess we don't really have a regular bar we go to, but before gigs we often like to do a ritual of getting espresso martinis wherever we can. They're a mixture of Kahlua, vodka and coffee, and 2 is definitely our maximum. But we hit a sweet spot and we always play the best shows after having them. And they're delicious, and not all bars make them, but it's a pretty common drink here in Australia, yeah.
Nighthawks is conveniently located in Collingwood, about a 2-minute walk away from my work. They have $5 pints that run, I don't even know what time they run till, probably like 8 or something. It's real good. The people who own it are absolute legends. I should probably stipulate that legend in Australia doesn't necessarily mean like you Chuck Berries or whatever, it's just like real good people. Not only are they real good people, they have a bar dog named Fuji that just runs around and you can pat it, and it's like such a cool place, such a cool dog.
Crazy Arms is a bar that was built out the back of Polyester Records in Fitzroy. Like a lot of brick and mortar record stores, they were having trouble in staying afloat, finding new ways to diversify, and so they built a bar out the back. It's a nice sort of joint, sometimes pretty quiet, but then it just sort of hits peak mayhem on Friday night sometimes, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. But they still keep the record store open most of the time, but everyone's out the back going mental.
There's cheap beers there, you can listen to records, hang out with record nerds. Yeah, it's a great venue all around.